Hello everyone, my name is Guilherme and welcome to another massive multiplayer online game, Devlog. So I'm writing this MMORPG, working up to an hour a day, and in the previous video we basically managed to add the basic networking code to the server side. Well, when I mean basic, I mean very basic, because the only thing that we did was to open like a socket to an IP address and a port, and listen to the socket and then close it appropriately when we finish the server, okay? But that's the foundation, and right now in this video we kind of need to have like the client handle working. And I know that some people may talk to me and say, hey, we need to test the server. So we're gonna start this video with a little bit of a test here to see if the server you're gonna run, okay? So in the massive multiplayer online folder, I'm gonna create a new file here called client.py. And very simple, I'm gonna create a new socket here. So I'm gonna import socket. And again, this is just like for testing, okay? We're gonna create a new sock here that are gonna be socket.socket. Again, I already explained it, that what is a sock and what is AF-INET, what is socket.sock string. I already explained it that, and in the previous video. Now I'm just creating a client side just for us to test, okay? And in the same manner that we did in the server here, that we created the sock, but in the client, instead of binding the socket to this address, we need to connect the socket to this address, okay? So I'm gonna do sock.connect, and folks, I will literally like hard code this here, okay? Do not do that as, at home, but I will literally gonna copy the IP address for us to test and the port. And I know this IP address and this port because in the game server, I typed like the default IP and the default port right here, okay? That's why I'm like literally copying and pasting by hand this. Again, this whole code is just a test. We're gonna get rid of it very soon. That's why I'm doing this way. And then I'm gonna just send a small message, okay? Using this sock. We're gonna do sock.send all, and I'm gonna send a binary message. In Python, you put a B before the binary, like the string, to indicate that it's a binary. And I'm gonna call hello world, just like that. Then I'm gonna try to receive something back to the server, sock.receive, and I'm gonna receive like 124 bytes, and then I'm gonna close the socket. Oh, I don't think it's necessary to try to receive something back to the server. I think the send all is gonna be enough. And this is the client, okay? So what I'm gonna do is run the server, because in the previous video, if everything goes right, when a new connection, when the accept connections find a new connection here, they're gonna call the add new client. And the add new client, you're basically gonna print new connection and you're gonna send the address. So we may be able to run the server. So let me run the server here, python server.py, it's running, and we may be able to, inside the MMO folder, and for some reason the client is not appearing. I want this client to be here. Please move. I don't want this client to be inside the... Here we go. Now it's here, and I'm using the other monitor to track this. So I'm gonna open a new terminal here using CMD, because again, the server is running. Okay, so I have like the server running right here, and what I'm gonna do is run the client, python client.py, and we should be able to see a message here, okay, called saying, hey, this client just connected. Let me run. Here we go, new connection, and we have this, okay. Just like that, there's a new connection in the server, meaning that it's running, okay, just fine. Let me keep here, let me shut down. We have an error, of course, this is like expected. And I think I don't even need this error right now that we added in the previous video, but I will leave it here just for us to if something goes wrong, you're gonna do that. But I'll actually keep I'm gonna keep this. Don't worry. But the point here is that we have the new connection. That's everything that we wanted to here. And again, I don't even need to send a message, because this connection is not because of the message, but because of the sock.connect here in the client. So if I run this again, the server, and run the client here, but without the send message, we should be able to see a new connection here. So it's localhost as well, and this is the port number of the client, okay, in my operational system. And maybe if I run this again, I may be able to see a new connection from a different port. And I can run this a lot of times, and the server is actually generating a new, identifying a new socket, a new connection every time you run this. So that's exactly what you want, okay? Just like that, very fine, very good, okay? This is exactly what we want, folks. So now that you guys saw that it's working, okay, let's start developing the actual code to handle that, because right now, again, there's nothing here. We need to create some stuff to handle, because we only identify a new connection and there's nothing after that. We need to do something. So I'm gonna create the client handle that we talked a lot in the past. So I'm gonna create a new folder inside my server. I'm gonna go ahead and new file. I'm gonna create a client. Oops, I already have this. I'm sorry. Oh. That's convenient, right? And I'm gonna import threading. Import threading. There you go. And I'm gonna import the import socket as well. Maybe we need like something else as well. I'm not sure. But for now, we're gonna import only that. I'm gonna create a client handle that are gonna implement threading.thread. Gonna create a constructor to it, and this constructor is gonna receive the connection and the address of the client. It's gonna also receive the server, because the client needs to communicate to the server. And again, the client handle is server side, okay? It's not client side. This here is client side, but the server, the client handle is not, okay? And here I'm gonna call the init of the thread, otherwise you're gonna have problems. And I'm gonna store these three variables: the connection, the address, and the server in right here. Self.server equals to server. Self.connection is gonna be the connection, and the self.address is gonna be the address. Okay, and the address is the IP address plus the port of the connection. Okay, and what we're gonna do here is like override the run method of the thread. Okay, so I'm gonna def run self, and here is basically where the magic is gonna happen, because this is where we will, like, this is gonna be running all the time while the server running is true as well. Okay, so while self.server.running, you're gonna run some code here, and like in advance here, what you're gonna do here is basically listen to this connection, because if you remember, we sent a message here, but no one was listening to receive this hello world. So here inside the client handle thread, you're gonna run for this kind of message. Okay, it's important to mention here this here as well. But for now, let me just attempt to create a new client handle and make it work. Okay, simple like that. So in the game server, let me actually close the terminal interface for now. And in the game server, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a list of all the connected clients here, and I'm gonna have to do this like right here. Connections. You're gonna be a list, and we also need to make this thread safe. So we're gonna do connections lock. That again is a threading.lock. Simple like that. Okay, And I'm not gonna make getters and setters for that because it's a list, it's a little bit more complicated. And we're gonna be able to like access the connections log by hand if we want, okay? It's gonna be simple. In the add new client, what we're gonna do here when we have a new connection, we're gonna create a new client handle. So that's why we need to import it here. So from client handle, import client handle. Okay. And here, when we make a new connection, what we're gonna do is like, oh, I'll leave this print for now, but I'm gonna create a new client that is a client handle. We're gonna pass the connection, the address, and the server, which is self, because well, we are inside the class itself. And then I'm gonna add this client to my new connections pool. Okay, and we need to do this in a thread safe way. So that's why I'm gonna use with self.connections lock. Well, I will basically, oh, I forgot, I need to start this because this is a thread. Okay, so we need to start this thread as soon as possible, and then I'm gonna add to the connection self connections dot append client, just like that. So again, what I did here is create a new client handle, start a new client, and then append it to the connections. Okay, actually we don't even need to make everything inside the lock. You can just do with connections lock, connections.append client. Okay, very simple like that. Okay, and the other stuff that we need to do, because right now, good, when you add a new client, we create a new client handle class and start this because it's a thread. So we're gonna create a new thread and start running, and then we're gonna add this to the connections. Okay, and here, I think what may be good for us to do here is to listen to the client, to the connection. Okay, so in a very similar way that we did before, I'm gonna listen to the connections inside this this run while loop here. And the way that I'm gonna do this, again, I will need to do inside a try because it may raise some exceptions. Okay. And I'm gonna try to retrieve a message from this connection by calling message equals to self.connection.receive, and we're gonna try to receive 124 bytes, just like we did in the server actually, like here, just like we did here. And if something goes wrong, it's gonna raise an exception, and I'm gonna print the exception just for now. But I'm not gonna keep that forever. Okay, it's just for debug purposes. And just like we did in the server, we're gonna import the sys, and I'm also gonna print sys.asciiinfo 0, just like that. So we're gonna see the class here, and I'm gonna break this while loop here if something wrong happens. And well, this is important. We may reach this exception. This is very, very, very important. Keep that in mind. We may reach this exception even with the server running. And why? Because the client here may disconnect. Okay, that's why I'm breaking the server. I'm breaking this loop here and not shutting down the server, because you don't want to shut down the entire server just because a client disconnects. If a client disconnects, we just need to raise a flag and say, hey, we disconnected. The client is no longer connected. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's very important, and we're gonna. That's why what we are breaking here. This is basically handling the client disconnecting or the client having any kind of error. I don't care what happens. I will just shut down the client and say, hey, you are a bad boy, get out. Basically, okay? And if you don't receive a message, if the receive returns known, so if not message, it also means that something wrong happens, and I'm gonna shut down the client as well. And I'm breaking this while loop because after this run, of course the thread is gonna end, and you're gonna raise a flag saying, hey, you can remove this client. Okay, not a problem. But again, I'm gonna process the message. I actually for now I'm gonna only print the message. Gonna put self.address. Gonna put send a new message, and I'm gonna print the message right here. Okay, very simple, and it's gonna work just fine. So if the client handle receives a message from the client, you're gonna print the message just like that. Very simple. Okay, and I think that's enough for now for us to test this again, because again, when we add new client, it's gonna create a new thread, start it, and create a new connection. Okay, simple like that. Let me run this again. So I'm gonna run the Python server, and then in the client, but this time I'm gonna send a message. I'm gonna send hello world. Okay, so every time the client connects, it's gonna send hello world. I'm gonna run this Python client, and here we go. I send a message python client.py, and the server received it first received the connection, so new connection, and localhost port 57,811, and this same user sent a new message, and the message is hello world. And if I create a new connection, well, take a look at that. Connecting a lot of clients here, and the server is receiving both the connections and the hello world. So that's amazing. But there's something wrong going on here that I'm pretty sure that you may be able to figure that out. And that's something that is wrong, is that we are creating new connections, but we are not shutting down because the server is closing, and well, there's nothing to say, hey, we finished, please get out. So we need to do that, and for that, in the client handle, I'm gonna create again a new like thread safe property like that with a getter and a setter. Let me actually copy and paste this just for to make the time a little bit better. And I'm gonna call it finish it. Okay, and I'm gonna create a finish it and a finish it lock. Okay, and I think that's enough. And here in the initialization, I'm gonna do self dot underline finish it lock. Gonna be threading dot lock, and self dot finish it. We're gonna be false by default. Okay, and in the beginning of this run, I'm gonna do it again. Self dot finish it. It's gonna be false. Oh, I'm actually not gonna put getters and setters for that. You're gonna understand that in a second, because I don't want people outside the client handle to set this. I only want a getter, but I will rename this. Is finished. I'm gonna create a function called is finished that are gonna return true if the player if the user finished this stuff. Okay, and now with finished, sorry. Oh, it's false by default here. So in the run, I'm gonna do with self dot finished lock, self dot finished, you're gonna be true. This is basically a flag, and let me do it again, say that it's false. This is basically, folks, a flag to say, hey, we finished running this entire code here. The player, the connection is no longer active. Okay, so this is like the meaning of this is finished method. Okay, and why we did that? Because now in the game server, we will be able to create a new function called like remove disconnected clients. It's gonna basically iterate. So let me put a description. It will iterate over all clients in the connection list and check to see if they are finished. If so, it will remove them. Okay, so this is basically what we're gonna do here. Okay, we're gonna iterate over all the the connections that we have inside this list, and if you find something that is like finish it, we're gonna remove it. And there's an easy way to do this. I'm gonna call it with connections locks because we want a lock, and I'm gonna do self connections. You're gonna be, and I'm gonna use a little bit of Python magic to do like obj for obj in self.connections, if not obj.is finished. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is keep in this list the client that is not finished. Okay, that is not like done, that is not ended, disconnected, and stuff like that. So this is a function that we can call to clean up this stuff. Okay, we basically call this to say, hey, this server is no longer active, and yes, that way we can clean up everything, just like that. Very simple. And let me, in the end of this run, for convenience, I'm gonna print like the server client disconnected. I'm gonna print the self.address as well. And of course, we created this method, but we are not calling it anywhere. So we sort of need to call this. And there is two approaches to call the disconnected clients. The first one that I think that is pretty reasonable is to call it after a new successful connection. Like we add a new client, and then we can call self.remove disconnected clients. Just for convenience, to avoid like the server to become a monster full of disconnected clients. Okay, so we can do that as well. And the last thing that I'm gonna do here is to grab the server. Where's the server? Here we go. And inside the MMO server, I'm gonna check like inside the tick for the remove disconnected clients as well. So every time the server ticks, it's gonna figure out if there's a new disconnection, and if so, it's gonna disconnect the client as well. Okay, actually it's gonna remove because it's already disconnected. Simple like that. So now if we run the server again, Python server, it's running, and if you run the client, you can see here new connection, and we have a new connection, then you have a new message, and then client disconnected. You have like the disconnection of the client. It shut down, and that's okay. Okay, so we no longer have this client connected in the server, and we can adapt this client here to send more than one message, like test. Let me put like hello in the line in a message, and then world in another one. So this client is sending like 3 messages, and let me call it. You have like hello world test, and this is important. This is interesting as well, because you can see that the client sent 3 messages, and the server received 1 message, only 1 message from this client. And this is very important to address here, because only because you send in separate calls here, it does not mean that those messages will not be concatenated. And this is gonna be handy when we add like the process message stuff inside the client handle. This is very important to keep that in mind. Okay, but again, in this video, we advanced a lot, because now we have a server that we can connect a client, and they're gonna connect again, and then they're gonna disconnect. That's very important. That's very interesting. And for us, just to make things a little bit easier, because we don't want like this bunch of messages everywhere. Okay, we don't want that. We definitely don't want that. So what we're gonna do is create a terminal interface to access the game server connections. Okay, I don't think that this needs to be a private stuff. It could be public, so everyone can access the connections. It's gonna make the life a little bit easier, maybe. I'm gonna do some functions for that. I'm gonna create like a def get all connections. I'm gonna return a list, and I'm gonna return self.connections with self.connections lock. Out will be a copy of all the connections. You can see that I'm copying this, and I'm gonna return out. And it's important, I'm not creating a new instance of the client handle, I'm just copying the list itself. Okay, so I'm getting all the connections here. Very simple. And in the terminal interface, I'm gonna create a new method here. Maybe here, the list connections self documentation lists all the connected clients. I'm gonna get the connections by using self.server.get all connections, and I'm gonna for print connections for con in cons print connection dot address. Here you go. So this is gonna be a list of all the connections, and I'm gonna print the address of the connections, of course, if we type list connections in the terminal. And because of that, we don't need to say like the client disconnected. We don't need that. Let me comment the code actually. And we don't need the client connected as well, that is in the game server here. You don't need this, okay? You only need the code itself. Let me make this here. Here you go. So now I can call in the terminal list connections to have a list of all the connected players. And that may cause problems, by the way, but don't worry, I don't care. Don't care for now. Server.py, so I have a bunch of stuff here, and in the client I will actually import time, and I'm gonna do like time.sleep for a second, actually for 2 seconds before everything. So I send a message, and then I wait for 2 seconds, and then I send another message. This is going to be useful for us to see the client connected, okay? So the server is running, and I can list connections, and you can see here that I have 0 connections, okay? And if I run the client as well, it received a new message, but list connections, well, we have a message, we have a new connection here, okay? It's still sending the messages. Here we go, it finished. Hello world, test, and it finished, and you can see here that there is no longer a connection done yet, okay? Let me shut down the server. Shutting down, here we go. And in the game server, actually in the client handle, I'm not gonna print this send message here. I'm not gonna do that. So we have list connections, no connections. Let me create a new connection. And I'm gonna list connections. There's a new connection. If I list it again, there's a new connection. If I wait a little bit more, 6 seconds, here we go, there's no connections anymore, okay? Because now the server is actually handling the new connection and the shutdown, okay? Very good, very important, and we can expect this to grow a little bit better later on. We don't need the sprints anymore. We don't need any of this. Something that we don't need as well that is starting to bother me is that this shutting down. So we're gonna remove this except. Okay, I'll actually make this error here just for convenience, but I'll do nothing with that, honestly, okay? And the last thing that I want to do today in this video is we have a new connection, that's good. Actually, I'll leave this to the next video, because in the next video, well, we already know that you can have a server that can receive as many connections as possible, and it can run and store the connection. Let me actually run the server and launch 2 different players. So list, connections, nothing connected, but let me launch another terminal here. Here we go. And I'm gonna remember, you're gonna wait for 6 seconds before it shut down. So I'm gonna launch two clients here. So first client, Pythons, sorry. First client, let me actually increase this the amount of time that you're gonna sleep, because 6 seconds is not a lot. So let me sleep for 12 seconds. Here you go, that's better. And now, let me launch this one, and then I have, I forgot to press enter. Here you go, it's connected, and you can see, why it's not running? Here we go, now it's running, and there's a connection. Let me launch the another one, and there's 2 connections here. And if I keep calling it, eventually you're gonna have a time that here you go, I only have 1 connections. This thread is already done, this here, and this one as well, so I may have no connections. Just like you can expect in a massive multiplayer online role-playing game server, okay? So that's it for this video. In the next video, we're gonna start to actually process, we need to actually parse the message that the client sends, because right now we are doing nothing, but we need to do something. It's important, okay? So in the next video, I almost crashed my computer here. We're gonna start to parse this kind of message here. Of course, this is not a message that we planned. If you remember from the previous video, we have a bunch of headers here with a payload and stuff like that. We are almost getting there, but not yet. But we need to parse this message first, okay? We need to provide a good API to parse this message as well, okay? So this is the subject for the next video. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you have any questions or comment, leave in the comments that I'm gonna try to answer as fast as possible. My name is Guilherme, and I see you in the next video.